Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today we are going to take our last topics in the development of head and neck, that is development of face and development of palate. So beginning with the development of face. So as I already told you that most of the organs and parts of the body begin to develop in the fourth week. So face development also starts in fourth week and occurs mainly between fourth and eighth week, but is completed by 10th week or so. And as I will show you in the diagram, 5 facial prominences or 5 swellings appear around the primitive oral cavity or stomodium. Stomodium we have already talked about in previous lectures, but I will show you again in the diagram. There is a single frontonasal prominence and it is located in the forehead region, future forehead region in the midline. So that's why it is unpaired and single cranial to the stomodium. On each lateral side of the stomodium, there are the paired maxillary swellings, and just caudal to the stomodium are the two mandibular swellings or prominences. So these swellings, these are prominences are also known as swellings. So these are substitutable terminology, and we would sometimes use the term prominence, sometimes swelling. And remember that the maxillary prominence and mandibular prominences, they are part of the first pharyngeal arch. In previous lectures we discussed that the first pharyngeal arch gets divided at its ventral end into a cranial part which is maxillary prominence and a caudal part which is mandibular prominence, and they take part in the development of face. And as we will see later, the maxillary prominences form the mainly the cheek parts, and the mandibular prominences form the jaw parts of the face. Frontonasal prominence, which is single and in the midline present just cranial to the stomodium, it results from the proliferation of mesenchyme on the ventral surface of the developing forebrain vesicle. And next we take a diagram. So here we have the stomodium, the primitive oral cavity, and then we can see the 5 swellings. Frontonasal prominence, single, then a pair of maxillary prominences and a pair of mandibular prominences. This is the prominence of the developing heart, which is also known as cardiac bulge, as you can see. So we take a little bit later stage. So this is frontonasal prominence. It has become larger, and it has been formed due to proliferation of mesenchyme just lying on the cranial aspect of the forebrain, developing forebrain. And of course, everything on the outer side is covered by ectoderm, and these two circular, roughly circular circumscribed thickenings of ectoderm on the surface of the frontonasal prominence, these are called nasal placodes. They take part in the formation of the lining of the nasal cavity, as you will study next. So here in the stomodium we see the oropharyngeal membrane, but here we see that the oropharyngeal membrane is breaking down and disappearing, and these are the maxillary prominences on each side, one on each side, and this is the mandibular prominence, and the two mandibular prominences which are separate here, they are fused with each other to form the lower jaw. So lower jaw is brought into existence quite early in the development, although chin is not present, but lower jaw comes into existence the 5th week or so. So this is the photograph of an actual human embryo in the late 4th week or early 5th week. This is the frontonasal prominence, single, the maxillary prominence of right side maxillary prominence of left side, mandibular prominence of left side, and mandibular prominence of right side, and mandibular prominence of left side. And here we can see that by the fifth week, early fifth week or late fourth week, they begin to meet each other and begin to fuse. And this is the stomodium, in which the oropharyngeal membrane is almost gone, it has disappeared. And these are the 5 swellings again: frontonasal, 2 maxillary, and 2 mandibular, which form the human face. This again, remember, this is the cardiac bulge. It has nothing to do with the development of face. As you've seen in the diagrams, the mandibular prominences grow toward each other in the medial direction, finally meet each other, fuse with each other, and form the lower jaw and, of course, the lower lip. The frontonasal prominence, its upper part forms the forehead, and lower part contributes to the formation of nose. Here you have to remember just what I showed you in the previous diagram: nasal placodes, 2 oval thickenings of ectoderm which appear on the frontonasal prominence. So a pair of nasal placodes appears, and these placodes are nothing but thickenings of the local ectoderm. The mesenchyme on the margins, around the margins of each nasal placode, proliferates and produces U-shaped or horseshoe-shaped swelling around each nasal placode. And when such horseshoe-shaped swelling appears around the nasal placode, the nasal placode come to lie in the depth of that uh, of a depression, uh, which are these depressions are called nasal pits. So as there are 2 nasal placodes, the 2 nasal pits are formed, which are primordia of the nasal cavities, and the lining epithelium of the nasal cavities will be derived from nasal placodes, and they are ectodermal. And under the ectoderm is the mesoderm, because it has proliferated to form the horseshoe-shaped swellings. And these swellings I will show you in the next diagram. So this is a front view of the developing face of an embryo. So this is the stomodium, which is changing into oral fissure, quite large. So this is the space between the maxillary prominences and the frontonasal prominence and the 2 mandibular prominences, which are fused with each other to form lower jaw. And you can see the nasal placode on each side, and you can also see that on the margins of the nasal placode, this horseshoe-shaped swelling is appearing by the proliferation of mesenchyme, and nasal placodes are now changing into or coming to lie in the depth of the pits instead of placodes. As you can see in the diagram in the 6th week, these U-shaped swellings, the horseshoe-shaped swellings, have been formed around the nasal placodes, and nasal placodes have now gone into the depth of this recess, which is called nasal pit. So on each side now we have 2 nasal pits, and this is the developing region of the nose. This is the oral fissure, and this is the lower jaw. And in the this slide tells you what we have already discussed. One thing important, that the medial nasal swellings, they grow toward each other and also grow in a downward direction, and their lowermost part fuses with each other. So two fused medial nasal swellings give rise to a combination of structures, and collectively these structures are known as intermaxillary segment. And as I will show you in the next diagram, you will see that the intermaxillary segment, which is formed by the fusion of tissue of the medial nasal prominences, consists of 3 components: Labial component, meaning the lip component, which forms the middle part of the upper lip, which is called philtrum. Then the upper jaw component, which forms premaxilla, and there is a parietal component which forms the primary palate. This will study again in the development of palate. So if you see a diagram, uh, this is a front view of an embryo in the 7th week of development. You see the nasal pits. These are the swelling, horseshoe-shaped swellings around the nasal pits. These are the medial nasal swellings, and this is the lateral nasal swelling. And the medial nasal swellings are gradually now fusing with each other to form the intermaxillary segment. This is the oral fissure, quite large in size, and this is the lower jaw formed by fusion of the two mandibular prominences. And the lateral nasal swellings are fusing with the maxillary prominences to form the cheeks. Still, the union has just started. You can see this line of fusion where they will fuse with each other on each side completely. And on the lateral aspect, eyes have started developing, but they are quite uh, widely apart from each other, situated on the lateral aspect of the developing face, and they are not visible in this. So, talking of the intermaxillary segment, see the intermaxillary segment, which is represented by this beige color or brownish color here. This is formed by the fusion of two medial nasal swellings, and of course, this is the on each side is the maxillary swelling, and the three parts of the three components of the intermaxillary segment: labial component, which forms the philtrum of the upper lip. Then there is a jaw component, which bears the four incisor teeth, two central incisors and two lateral incisors, and then the parietal component, which forms this small triangular part of the adult palate. This is known as primary palate. The secondary palate, as we will study later, is formed from palatine shells, which develop from the maxillary swellings, which are covered here, uh, which are given this pinkish color in this diagram. So formation of the upper lip partly we have studied. Philtrum or upper lip develops from the most superficial part of the intermaxillary segment. And on each side, the lateral part of the upper lip develops from the maxillary prominence, because the maxillary prominence is fused with the medial nasal swellings or intermaxillary segment, and uh, normally they fuse with each other completely, so that each lateral part of the upper lip is completely in complete continuity with the middle part, which is the philtrum. But if there is some problem with the fusion or merger of the maxillary swellings with the medial nasal swellings, then there results an anomaly which is very common, which is known as cleft lip. This is very common anomaly of the development of face, and we will see diagrams later. Same diagram repeated here to show you the development of upper lip. So this is the middle part of the upper lip, which is formed from the medial nasal swellings. They will still grow toward each other, fuse with each other to form the intermaxillary segment. But you can see the lateral part of the upper lip is formed by maxillary prominence, and this on each side, this is the region where the maxillary prominences are fusing with the medial nasal prominences, and this is the region on each side where the fusion may fail to take place, more common on the left side, of course. And when this fusion fails to take place completely or partially, this results in cleft of the upper lip, a very common anomaly of the face. In this diagrammatic representation, this is the color coding also. This in the pinkish shows the frontonasal prominence contribution, which you can see the forms the forehead and then the lateral nasal swellings, the lateral nasal processes, and medial nasal swellings and medial nasal processes, and I think this uh, axillary swellings and medial nasal processes uh, fusing with each other to form the maxillary, this upper lip, and this is the filtrum part of the upper lip, and this is the lateral part of the upper lip, and the maxillary and the lateral nasal swellings are fusing with each other to form the cheek, and you can see the eyes are now visible as they are moving forward and medially after developing on the lateral aspect of the face. They are moving forward to come right to the front of the face, so that binocular vision is possible. And yellow color is what the contribution by the maxillary processes or maxillary swellings, and this is the lower jaw formed from the mandibular processes. And you can see at the junction of the first pharyngeal arch and second pharyngeal arch, here we have the first pharyngeal cleft, and around the first pharyngeal cleft these swellings developed by the proliferation of mesenchyme of the first and second pharyngeal arches in the form of small raised small swellings, which are called auricular hillocks. So this is the uh, developing pinna or external ear of each side. So you can see it develops quite low down, almost in the region of neck, and later it develops to its normal position, as we will discuss later on. Again, a colored representation of contribution by different swellings or prominences. The green for the frontonasal swelling, brown for the maxillary. You can see the maxillary swellings are fused with the lateral nasal swellings, and cheeks have been brought into existence, and the maxillary swellings are partly fused with the uh, mandibular swellings, which are colored blue, and here they also contribute to the formation of cheek. And when the maxillary swellings fuse with the mandibular swellings, the size of the mouth is reduced and brought to its normal size. In the earlier pictures you have seen that the size of the oral fissure was very large, but now in this diagram which shows a fully formed fetal face, the color of the and the size of the oral fissure is normal. And if you concentrate on the colors, this yellow color is for the lateral contribution from the lateral nasal swelling, and purple is color is representing the contribution by the medial nasal swellings, which are fused with each other and forming this tip of the nose and philtrum part of the upper lip. Lateral part of the upper lip is formed by the maxillary swellings, and you can see this is the region where the maxillary swellings are fused with the medial nasal swellings, and this is the region of the commonest anomaly of the face, cleft upper lip or cleft lip. So next, formation of cheeks we have already. So fusion of maxillary and mandibular prominences, and fusion of maxillary and partly the lateral prominence also, lateral nasal prominences, but mainly the fusion of maxillary and mandibular prominences contribute to the formation of cheeks. And another result of this fusion is reduction in the size of oral fissure to bring it to its normal size. Now, formation of nasolacrimal duct is also to be discussed, where the maxillary swellings and the lateral nasal swellings are meeting each other. An ectodermal groove is present. This is called nasolacrimal groove. Later on, the ectoderm of this ectoderm of this nasolacrimal groove rolls up, forms a solid cord of ectodermal cells, which detaches from the surface ectoderm and becomes canalized to form the nasolacrimal duct. Then we'll see this in a diagram. Upper part of the nasolacrimal duct becomes dilated to form the nasolacrimal sac, and it opens into the conjunctival sac by a pair of lacrimal canaliculi. So this shows the development of face, where you can see the nasal pits, the U-shaped or horseshoe-shaped swellings. The medial part of the swelling is the medial nasal swelling, lateral part is the lateral nasal swelling, is the frontonasal prominence, the oral fissure on each side of the oral fissure. We can see the maxillary swellings, and is the lower jaw formed by the meeting together and fusing together of the mandibular swellings. Further, you can see the development. Now the size of the oral fissure is being reduced by the fusion of the maxillary swellings and mandibular swellings, and cheeks are being brought into existence, and eyes are now moving from the lateral aspect of the head to the front of the face. These are the eyes. Now you can see, but still they are not in their normal position, but they have moved anteriorly and forward, and you can see the medial nasal swellings fused to form the intermaxillary segment, and they are going to join with the maxillary swellings to form the upper lip. Still there is a gap, but normally they fuse with each other, and philtrum part, central part of the upper lip is formed by these medial nasal swellings or intermaxillary segment, and lateral from the maxillary swellings. And these are the developing external ears on each side at the junction of first and second pharyngeal arches, and this is the auricular hillocks, small swellings around the first pharyngeal cleft, and this is the region of nasolacrimal groove. Here the nasolacrimal duct is formed from the ectodermal cells, and this is the front region of frontonasal prominence, maxillary prominences. This is the fused mandibular prominences. Medial nasal swellings, lateral nasal swelling, nasal pit, oral fissure. The muscles of the facial region, this topic we have partly covered in the development of pharyngeal arches. The muscles of the facial region are derived from the first and the second pharyngeal arches. The muscles of facial expression themselves are derived from the mesenchyme of the second pair of pharyngeal arches. The second pharyngeal arch contributes to the formation of muscles of facial expression, and that is why all of them are supplied by facial nerve, which is the nerve of the second arch. But in the region of face, we know are also present other muscles, and they are the muscles of mastication mainly, and these are supplied by the mandibular nerve, which is a branch of the trigeminal nerve, that is the nerve of the first arch is trigeminal nerve, and mandibular branch supplies the muscles of mastication. So these muscles are present in the region of face. They are derived from the mesenchyme of the pharyngeal arches. And this topic we have already discussed. The eyes shift their position and ears also shift their position. Eyes move forward and medially to come to lie on the front of the face, so that binocular vision becomes possible, and the auricles and the external ears, they move upward to finally come to lie at the level of eyes on the side of the face. In the previous diagram, we have seen that the auricles develop in the cervical region around the first pharyngeal cleft, but gradually the ears shift their position and the auricles or the external ears, or you can say the ear, rises gradually by differential growth in the region of the head and neck, and finally the eyes and ears come to lie at the same level. Movement of the eyes is medially and forwards, and the movement of the ears is upward. The diagram will show us this. So this is the side view of an embryo of 8th week. You can see the eyes are still shooted quite laterally, but they are coming to the front of the face, and here you can see the auricle has developed, but it is situated quite low, roughly at the level of angle of mandible, just at a junction of head and neck. But it, as the you can see in this diagram, the ears rise. This arrow shows the rise of the ears, and ears come to lie at the level of, finally at the level of eyes, and the eyes move forward and come to lie in the front of the face, and they have reached their almost final position, so that the binocular vision will be possible in the human being after birth, and the upper and lower eyelids become fused, and they become unfused just before birth. That you will study in the development of eye. So the congenital anomalies of the face, I already told you. Lateral cleft lip, to be precise, it is lateral upper cleft lip, or just called cleft lip, but practically and actually it is cleft upper lip. And the reason I have repeated many times in our discussion just now, that the failure of fusion of maxillary swelling with the medial nasal swellings on the one or both sides leads to this anomaly, that is presence of a cleft between philtrum and lateral part of the upper lip, and it may be unilateral or bilateral, but unilateral is more common, and it is more common on the left side, and it is more common in male babies. Then much rarer anomaly is median cleft lip. This results from fusion of the from the failure of the fusion of the medial nasal swellings with each other. The lateral nasal swellings fuse with the medial nasal swellings, but the medial nasal swellings themselves fail to fuse with each other, and this results in a median cleft lip, but this is a very rare anomaly. Then oblique facial cleft results from the failure of the fusion of the maxillary swellings with the lateral nasal swellings, and in such case the nasolacrimal groove is open and the nasolacrimal duct is exposed to the surface, and this can also be unilateral or bilateral. Now this diagram, or this photo, actually not a diagram, this photo of a child shows the cleft of the upper lip. You can see it is a boy most probably, and the cleft is present on the left side at the junction of philtrum and this left lateral part of the upper lip, which is developed from the maxillary swelling. So maxillary swelling has failed to fuse with the medial nasal swellings, and this has resulted in cleft upper lip. This is a cleft upper lip, but this is, as you can see, it is going deep. This is also associated with cleft palate. This we will discuss again when we come to the development of face, development of palate later on. The development of face is anomalies of development of face are many times associated with the development of palate, because their development is also interrelated, because the intermaxillary segment contributes to the formation of jaw as well as the palate. So in this child, you can see in the diagram on the right side, there is cleft lip, cleft of the upper jaw, and the cleft is extending into the palate. But this is a case on the left side, case of simple cleft upper lip or cleft lip. much easier to treat, is more difficult to treat, but they can be treated by surgery. As you can see in this diagram, same child is showing cleft lip. Most probably this baby is a male baby, and the cleft is, you can see it's present on the left side at the junction of the philtrum and the left part of the upper lip, and this is after repair, after surgery, and you can see the smile has been restored. uh, Doctors, the pediatric surgeons or facial surgeons or cosmetic surgeons can perform miracles, wonders, and they can restore the cosmetic disability of the child. So this diagram shows the unilateral cleft lip, more common on the left side, and this is the bilateral cleft lip, which is rare, but it is also due to failure of the maxillary swellings on both sides with the median nasal. This is the region of median nasal swellings, indicating the middle part of the upper lip, that is philtrum, and then the small middle part of the jaw bearing the fourth incisor teeth. And this defect appears to be deeper, involving the jaw as well as palate. So this is a rare anomaly, which is the bilateral cleft lip. And this is the commonest anomaly, unilateral cleft lip, more common in boys and more common on left side. These two photos show you cases of median cleft lip, which is a rare anomaly, but nevertheless we see this anomaly sometimes, and you can see there is a cleft in the middle of the lip, and you can very well now guess and understand that this is due to failure of the two medial nasal swellings with each other. Nothing is wrong with the failure of nothing is wrong with the fusion of maxillary swelling with the medial nasal swellings, but the problem is failure of fusion of maxillary swellings, and failure of fusion of two medial nasal swellings with each other, which results in the production of this median nasal cleft. Median nasal cleft, you can see, and you can judge this is due to failure of fusion of two medial nasal swellings with each other. Laterally there is no problem. Maxillary swelling has fused with the medial nasal swellings, but in the middle, the medial nasal swellings themselves have not properly fused. Another diagram showing the lateral cleft lip, but also cleft jaw, and maybe cleft palate also. But you can see the surgeons can help these children, and these cosmetic disabilities and physical disabilities can be treated by surgery. Another case in which the smile has been restored. This is before repair. Cleft lip in a boy, the left side at the junction of philtrum and the left part of the left lateral part of the upper lip, and this is the after repair. You can hardly recognize that repair has taken place. So this is a case of oblique facial cleft, where there is fusion of the maxillary swellings and lateral nasal swellings uh, failed, and cleft extends from the corner of mouth to the corner of eye, and this is a picture after repair of the defect. The development of palate. It developmentally consists of two parts. Primary palate we have already discussed. It is contributed by the intermaxillary segment, which has three parts or three components: labial component, jaw component, and palatal component. Palatal component forms primary palate, which is a small triangular anterior part of the adult palate, and in the adult palate this primary palate lies anterior to the incisive foramen, which is present on the palate, which you have studied in the skull when you studied in head and neck. The secondary palate is formed later, and that is why it is called secondary and is formed by two shelf-like mesenchymal processes or projections, horizontal, which are derived from maxillary swellings, and they are called palatine shelves because they are horizontal and shelf-like. Each of them is known as a palatine shelf. There are two palatine shelves, or each of them grows from the medial aspect of a maxillary swelling of its own site, and they are directed inframedially, and because tongue is quite high at this time, they are separated from each other by the developing tongue. But when the jaw grows and uh, assumes its normal size proportions, then the tongue descends because space in the developing oral cavity is now more and larger, and then the tongue descends, and then the two palatine shelves rotate upwards, assume an exact horizontal position, and then fuse in the midline with each other. And anteriorly, they fuse with the posterior border of the primary palate. This you will be able to understand in a diagram. Later, we will just take diagram. In the anterior part of the palate, almost 3/4 or more than that, uh, bone develops by intermembranous ossification and becomes hard palate. While the posterior part of the palate uh, does not develop bone, remains soft, and is called soft palate. And this also grows a little bit in posterior direction to form the uvula. The nasal septum grows down from the roof of the oronasal cavity that we'll study in the development of nose later, and finally fuses with the upper surface of the hard palate so that the nasal cavity becomes divided into the right and left nasal cavity. So this is a diagram or color representation of what we have already studied. Intermaxillary segment, lateral nasal prominence, then three parts of the intermaxillary segment: labial component, the jaw component, and the primary palate. And yellow are the lateral nasal swellings, and the brown are the maxillary swellings. And which show us the development of palate. So this is the primary palate, colored yellow. It has developed from the intermaxillary segment, from the palatal component of the intermaxillary segment. This is the jaw component, this is the upper lip component. And these are the two palatine shelves which appear from the maxillary swellings. These are the maxillary swellings. So these two horizontal shelf-like processes, palatine shelves. So they in the beginning are directed inframedially because tongue becomes high. When tongue develops, space in the oral cavities that's sufficient because jaw is smaller, and tongue intervenes between the two palatine shelves, which are growing in a medial direction but cannot meet each other later. When the lower jaw and mandible becomes larger in size, then the tongue becomes lower in position, and the two palatine shelves fuse with each other in the midline, and they form the secondary palate. So two palatine shelves fuse to form secondary palate. So final palate, adult palate is formed from the primary palate, this colored yellow, which is derived from the intermaxillary segment, and secondary palate, which is formed by the fusion of two palatine shelves, which are derived from the maxillary swellings. And as you can see, the uh, most posterior part of the palate, when the two palatal shelves fuse with each other, it is forming the uvula, and bone develops in the anterior part of the palate and becomes hard palate. Only the posterior most part of the palate remains soft, and it is known as soft palate. So this diagram compares the development of the face with the development of the palate. The color coding is just blue for the frontonasal prominence, green for the maxillary, and purple for the mandibular prominences, yellow for the medial nasal swellings, blue for the this this lateral nasal swelling, and you can see frontonasal swelling forming this part of the face. Middle part of the nose and the upper lip is formed by the medial nasal swelling. Bridge of the nose, the tip of the nose, and philtrum part of the upper lip are formed from the medial nasal swellings, and lateral part of the nose and the L of the nose is formed from the lateral nasal swelling. This is the maxillary swelling forming the cheeks when it fuses with the mandibular swellings, and the mandibular swellings are forming the lower jaw, and now the chin also appears by the end of the 10th week or so, and the face can be recognized to be human. And parallel with the development of face goes the development of palate. You can see the primary palate developed from the intermaxillary segment, and these are the two palatine shelves which are growing medially from the maxillary swelling. And here you can see the nasal septum grown downward from the roof of the nasal cavity, which will divide the nasal cavity into two separate chambers when it will meet and fuse with the palate. So the two palatine shelves are coming near to each other. Anteriorly they are fusing with the primary palate, and medially they are fusing with each other. This fusion begins in the anterior part of the secondary palate and proceeds in a caudal direction. And here you can see that the two palatine shelves are fused with each other completely to form the secondary palate, and they have also fused with the primary palate, and in this way the palate has been formed. And this is the region of incisive foramen, which indicates the region of juncture of primary palate with the secondary palate. Otherwise they are completely fused each other. Only incisive foramen remains at the junction of the two palatine shelves and the primary palate, and this dotted line indicates the uh, median line, which can be recognized even in the adult, which indicates the fusion of two palatine shelves. In the adult palate also we can see this line or raphe. And next, congenital anomalies of the palate. They are the cleft of the palate, because palate is formed in a complicated way. It's formed from the primary palate, then the secondary palate itself is formed by two shelves. So failure of fusion between the primary palate and secondary palate, or failure of fusion between the two shelves of the secondary palate, or failure of fusion between the maxillary swellings and the medial nasal swellings, or in other words, failure of fusion between intermaxillary segment and the maxillary swellings, can result in different anomalies of the palate, which can be independent or can be associated with the clefts of the face and upper jaw, cleft of the lip and upper jaw, because these developments are interrelated with each other. So these anomalies of the palate are divided into two parts: anterior cleft anomalies, which occur due to insufficient, improper merger of the fusion of the intermaxillary segment with the maxillary prominences. And this anomaly will normally or usually this will have three components. Left lip we have discussed, left of the upper jaw, that is that part of the jaw which is bearing the four incisor teeth. Central part of the jaw is not properly fused with the lateral part of the jaw on one or both sides. And cleft palate, which is a gap between primary and secondary palates. These are the anterior cleft anomalies. Then posterior cleft anomalies, they are due to incomplete or inadequate fusion between the two palatine shelves, and this gap or this cleft may extend throughout the length of the secondary palate, or may be restricted to its most posterior part, that is uvula. Because I told you earlier, I also showed you a diagram that the fusion of the two palatine shelves begins anteriorly and proceeds in a caudal direction. So if failure of this fusion occurs, sometimes it is just restricted to the most posterior part, that is uvula, but any cleft posterior to the incisive foramen is posterior cleft anomaly, and any cleft anterior to the incisive foramen is anterior cleft anomaly. So the anterior cleft palate may be unilateral or bilateral, and sometimes the anterior cleft anomalies and the posterior cleft anomalies are coexisting. So there is a complete cleft starting from the lip, then through the jaw, going to, between the primary and secondary palates, then also extending to the secondary palate completely, as we will see in the terms. So this central diagram is a normal palate. Two palatine shafts are fused with each other. This is the line of fusion, and this is the incisive foramen. This is the intermaxillary segment, upper lip portion forming the philtrum, jaw portion bearing the four incisor teeth, and the lateral nasal swellings form the lateral part of the upper lip and lateral part of the jaw, and the palatal shaft. They are fused with each other. There is no gap, and this is the normal condition. This is the uvula, posterior hanging part of the palate. And here, this is an anterior cleft anomaly where we see the cleft lip, cleft jaw, and failure of union between primary and secondary palates. So, unilateral anterior cleft anomaly. Then this is the bilateral anterior cleft anomaly, in which the failure of union between the secondary uh, palate and the primary palate on both sides, and then there is cleft jaw on both sides, cleft lip on both sides. So complete failure of fusion of the intermaxillary segment with the maxillary swellings on both sides, on the right as well as left side. Compare this. Here it is only present on the left side, which is commoner. Right side fusion has occurred, but if fusion fails on both sides, there will be bilateral anterior cleft anomaly. And the posterior cleft anomaly, as you can see, there is no anterior cleft anomaly. Fusion between primary and secondary palates has occurred. Fusion between intermaxillary segment and the maxillary swellings has taken place normally, but here you can see two palatine shelves have fused to each other, fused to have failed to fuse with each other completely throughout the length of the secondary palate, and there is a large gap in the palate, and two palatine shelves are not fused with each other, and the secondary palate is showing a gap, and this is a posterior cleft anomaly, and the posterior cleft anomaly can coexist with anterior cleft anomaly. This is a bilateral anterior cleft anomaly, and here we see that it is associated with posterior cleft anomaly. There is a cleft palate, cleft upper jaw, and cleft lip, and this is bilateral, and this is a unilateral anterior cleft anomaly and posterior cleft anomaly. So, as I told you earlier, the anterior cleft anomalies and posterior cleft anomalies can coexist, can be present together unilaterally, as you see in this diagram, or bilaterally. Now, this is the last slide, and this shows the pictures of a child before and after surgery. See, this is a posterior cleft anomaly. You can see a gap between the posterior part of the palate, that is the failure of union of the two palatine shelves, producing a gap in the posterior part of the palate, that is lying posterior to the incisive foramen, that is, it is known as posterior cleft anomaly, and this produces difficulty in speaking and difficulty in eating and drinking also. So these problems have to be resolved by treatment, and treatment is surgery, and this is a diagram showing the posterior cleft palate, and this is a diagram which it has been taken about repair of the posterior cleft palate, and you can see the gap has been repaired and the anatomy of the left has been restored, and this also solves the speaking and the eating and drinking problems of the child. So this finishes with the development of face, palate, as well as development of the head and neck.